Let's give a warm welcome, really warm welcome to Lilly Wachowski. Lilly, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here. How's it going, everybody? How was it? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Woo!
Double thumbs up.
Good.
All right, these are our moderators tonight. It's Andrew and Angela.
Hi.
Hi.
They're terrified, but they're going to do a great job.
You'll be fine.
All right, Andrew.
Hi, Miss Wachowski. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you, Andrew?
I'm good.
Good.
We just finished watching Bound, and I was wondering if you could talk us through the process and the experience you had creating your debut feature.
Well, it was an unusual filmmaking experience. It was it started in my local bookstore here in Chicago, the neighborhood that I live in presently, called Women and Children First. And back then, me and Lana were, still in the closet. We weren't out as trans at that time, and so we had some success getting scripts in front of people, and had a script optioned, and sold this one script to this guy Dino De Laurentiis, and that script we had not a great experience with. It had Dino turned around and sold it. It was called Assassins, and Dino had turned that script and sold it to Warner Brothers, made a bunch of money, and he was like, "What are you doing next?" And we came up with this idea. We were big fans of film noir, and because our experience on Assassins was it wasn't so great, we decided that we wanted to. We didn't trust anybody to make our film the way we saw it in our heads, and so we were like, we're gonna make our next thing we want to make ourselves, and we were heavily influenced by this one book that we had read called Roger Corman's autobiography, How I Made 100 Movies and Never Lost a Dime. And in that book, we understood. It gave us this great insight into the movie industry, in terms of like trying to write compelling scripts, but to do it in such a way that, from a producer's point of view, that those scripts could be made relatively inexpensively. And so we had always had that in the back of our head when we wrote everything in those early days. The Matrix was not one of those films. And so we were like, we want to write a film noir. We were huge fans of Billy Wilder and Alfred Hitchcock, and we felt like the film noir was a good sandbox to play in. But we had all this closeted energy between us. And so there was something in our subconscious that was compelling us to break the paradigm of the film noir, to break this idea of the love triangle, or to turn that love triangle on its head. And we came upon this idea, and we kind of backed into it a little bit, because we were like, we want the hero of this particular film noir to be the woman. And we felt like, or this is our rationale, we said to ourselves, well, if she's part of a love triangle with another man, who is trying to help her, then the man becomes this crutch. And we were like, we don't want to do that. And, there's like all this queer energy that's percolating in us. And so we were like, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll make them lesbians. And so we went into our local queer bookstore, Women and Children First, and we began our official research into the world of queerness, and yeah, and that's how it started going. And we pitched this idea to Dino, and we said we had kind of like we hadn't quite written it, but we had the idea of the story. And so he's like, what are you doing next? And we're like, well, we got this idea. We want to make it ourselves. And he's like, what is it? And we're like, well, there's this one woman and she's with this other woman and they're gonna, double cross this guy who's in the mob. And Dino was like, this first woman, she is lesbian. And we're like, well, yeah, she's lesbian. And then he said, this other woman, she also is lesbian. And we're like, oh, yeah, she's lesbian too. And he's like, we have a deal.
All right, and then the next question is, I've noticed a core theme in your works is characters discovering their identities or fighting against those that would seek to take their identities. What draws you to continually explore identity in all its complexity and to fight to retain your identity?
Well, I mean, back then it was all I thought about. Identity was, actually, I'm going to put that, it's something that percolated in my subconscious. It was a thing that like drove me, our films are about identity and liberation and love and, what is real and the idea of like Bound in particular was about like the boxes that we put ourselves in and make out of our lives. And like it's the very first shot of our filmography is a closet. And it's easy for me to like look back on my work and go, oh yeah, that's what you were working on. I all of that stuff is stuff that I'm interested in, but I didn't realize how interested in it I was. And so, like as I go forward, I don't know how much identity is going to play thematically in the stuff that I do because I'm out of the closet. I'm the stuff that I'm making as an out and proud trans woman. And so I think like when I think about identity is going to play itself out in the kinds of folks that I make my films with. Like I'm super invested in the idea of representation on Work in Progress, this TV show that I did, a really small TV show here in Chicago. I got 2 seasons out of it. It was on Showtime, and the creator, who also happened to be like a really good friend of mine, is this self-identified fat queer dyke, and she has been in the comedy scene here in Chicago for 25 years, and has never booked anything prior to this show. And so when I think about identity, that is how I want to explore identity. I want identity to be more of a conscious act as opposed to an unconscious act. And so, yeah, so that's what I'm here for. Queer and trans and black and brown filmmakers.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have our first audience question. Harriet, would you like to come up?
Well done, Chair flying in.
Hi. So first of all, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done. As an out trans woman, you and your sister, that means a lot to me as a trans woman, and it's just really inspiring to see. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to ask you about your creative process, just where you get your ideas and how you develop them and how you make them into a coherent story.
Well, I don't know, it's a little, I'm in this different space than I was. I After Sense8, I was going through some stuff. And we had done these 3 projects back to back to back. So we did Cloud Atlas, then we did Jupiter Ascending, and then we did Sense8. And we were posting and prepping those projects at the same time. So I was completely out of gas, going through the ringer, breaking out of my egg. And we got to the end. I actually started transitioning on the first season of Sense8. I was on hormones during that entire shoot, and I was very emotional. And I got to the end of the shoot, and then kind of went through this habit trail, this controlled environment of coming out of the closet. And I was in post, and so I would be in this little habit trail where I'd go from the editing room to home and then back. And so it was this controlled experiment of my outness. And I got to the end of that process, and I was I was so burnt, and I didn't think I wanted to do this anymore. And I walked away, and I felt this just burden lifted from me. And I was I didn't feel like I needed to do this anymore. And I started painting. I went back to school. I spent time with mom and dad before they died. And then when Work in Progress came along, me and Lana had kind of diverged, and where we went along these separate paths. And she still was playing around in the Matrix sandbox, and she went on to complete the Sense8 show and started working with these other guys. And I didn't until Work in Progress came along, I didn't have any desire really to make films at all. And then that show flipped a switch for me, and it changed everything. And so I found myself in this position where I was noticing that the real joy of filmmaking happens in the making. That it was I had invested so much of my time wondering what's the movie gonna do? What's the TV show gonna do? Are people gonna watch this? Is it gonna make lots of money? And that was I was worshiping this false idol, right? And I think a lot of people do that when they're in this industry. And so on Work in Progress, I was suddenly struck by, I had all these queers and trans folks, and my crew looked like Chicago. And I took inventory of that, and it was like, this is the reason to stick around. I can, like, if I can do anything, if I can, like, get people a chance to tell stories who don't normally get that chance, that's what I'm going to do. And so now when I'm like, now I don't have like this writing partner, like a lot of my, yeah, I've been working on the script for like 5 years, for 5 years. And it's, a lot of it comes out of, a lot of my work comes out of rage. And it's like rage about the world. And particularly right now, it's about rage about the world and transness. And so I want to make art that is a response to that. And so so right now, and because I've been taking so long on this project, it's like I find ways to when I'm looking at stuff or watching movies or watching TV shows or reading books or going to museums, I'm finding things that can inform my work. And so, like with this piece I'm writing, it's called The Hunted. And it's this, I'm writing it with my partner, who is also a professor. He's a professor here in Chicago at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And we went and saw this. We were at the Whitney about a year ago, and there was this artist who had an exhibit there called, his name was Josh Klein. And one of the pieces that he had was this one of the early deep fakes, and the deep fake was of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice and Donald Rumsfeld, and they were all in these like orange overall jumpsuits, like prison jumpsuits, and they were all crying and deeply apologizing and apologizing about their war crimes that they had committed in Iraq. And that kind of that kind of work is like what is informing my work right now, because it's about, this person is creating this art that is it is about justice, and it is about catharsis. It is about an imagined justice that we will never get, and the catharsis and joy that we get in the creation of it. And so that is like right now extremely informative of the piece that I'm doing right now, because what I'm doing is like trying to write a story about, trans injustice, and like finding a way to manifest a justice that I don't think is going to come, because I think it'll be worth something to people like me and people like you, and hopefully a bunch of other folks too. So yeah, that was a really long answer. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jumping off you talking about Sensei and work in progress, how did working on those shows differ from working on features, and how have they influenced your art going forward?
We really learned how to shoot faster. When you go from film to television, your schedules are just bonkers. And so you have to learn how to be quick on your feet, and shoot 10 pages a day, more 15 if you're on a low budget TV show. And I think that like, I don't know if I could have done that at the very beginning of my career, that it took me all of the stuff that I had done before to give me that I don't know, to give me that skill set. And it's not just the shooting days itself. It's the time in the editing room. It's like when you make movies, the most important thing that you can do is spend time with your movie and the editing, because that's where you learn how all the stuff that you did fits together and when it doesn't fit together. And then like you get to see like, oh, if I had just done that, if I had just had that character, just like, exit frame, I had a cut. And, unless you, and even like little things where you can just pick that line up, pick that up, say that again, just that last part. Okay, say it again one more time. Okay, so now say it quiet. That sort of thing is like this skill that you can like, and then once I got to this point where I was like having to shoot, 8 pages, 10 pages, it was like it was way simpler for me to like, okay, now push that camera in. Okay, keep those cameras with zoom lenses so that you can adjust a little easier. You just nudge it in a little bit. Okay, now that steady cam, now move that steady cam through there. And then like, okay, cross. Okay, cut. And wait, do that one more time without the steady cam crossing that lens. That sort of thing is like, yeah, speed. That's the answer. Not unlike this answer.
Awesome. We're gonna ask our next audience question from Emmy.
First of all, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to talk to us and ask questions. I wanted to ask, what should every woman keep in mind when faced with adversity in the industry, especially when having like unconventional or creative ideas?
That's a tough one. This industry it's got a lot of baddies in it. I think that the important thing is to know your work inside out. That when you're being questioned or you're being scrutinized or your work is being put down, that if you know your work inside out, you will have an answer to all of those questions. And if there's one thing that like directing, the main skill you have to have as a director, it's the ability to think on your feet, the ability to answer questions that you may not know. But if you know your piece inside and out, there's going to be a moment where you'll be moving along on instinct, and that instinct will guide you to where you have to go. And then the other thing I'll say is, and this goes to the other, it was partially to the other question about what I've learned about going from movies to television. And this is that, life is short. And it doesn't behoove you to work with jerks. It doesn't. Working with people who are not invested in the communal art form that we are all like coming together to make, that is an untenable situation. So it's like the best thing that you can do is find people who have love in their heart and want to bring all that love to your project. Because there's no other reason to be making communal art unless you want to make it with your fellow artists and human beings.
Thank you.
All right, our next question is, when adapting someone else's work, like Speed Racer, Cloud Atlas, how do you go about still making it true to yourself, distinctly in your voice? How do you make it a story only you can tell?
Well, I think it's I think that I don't think I could make something unless I had a unique way to make it. You know, I had love for Speed Racer, and I had love for Cloud Atlas. The book is, you know, shockingly amazing. But I wouldn't have that book. So many people said that book was impossible to make, and I would tend to agree. But we hit on this idea to turn it into like a meta narrative, that it wasn't 6 stories or 5 stories, it was one story. And because the themes were so prevalent throughout, that we were like, oh, if the themes are one story arc, then the narrative should be one story arc. And so something like that, and something like, you know, Speed Racer, which when I was a kid, I was like running home from school to watch on our TV. It was on at 3. You know, we don't have that anymore, really. Some shows we do, but back in those days, you had to park yourself in front of the television, and so we'd run home from school to watch. And you know, that when we started, that was a little easier because we loved anime so much that the idea of like doing cell animation, live action cell animation, like, or 3D, 2D moves, like visually, it became, our eyes just went wide at the prospect of doing that. So like, I have a lot of love for so much stuff that I read and watch, but unless I have a take on it, I'm not going to venture forward. Like, somebody like sent me the book, oh God, what's the Ursula Le Guin book? The other, Left Hand of Darkness, which is amazing, but like, I mean, how do you make that? And it's like, it's impossible. I don't get it. I couldn't make it. So yeah, I don't know. That was not it was unsatisfactory, that answer. Sorry.
That's good, thank you.
Hi, Lily.
Hello.
Finally. Okay. I have to urge you to make the Left Hand of Darkness. By the way, it's just it's one of the all-time masterpieces. You're the perfect person.
Oh,
You'd be the perfect person to do that. Honestly, I mean it. Okay. Anyway.
I don't know, the whole trip on the other side of the planet. I was just like, where's the spaceships?
But at the heart of it, though, right? It's just kind of this love story, which is at the heart of all of your films.
Yeah.
You know, just whatever the whistles are going off around it, and whatever they're not, it's just about these two people who are learning about each other during the course of it. That's kind of your jam, I think. You should reconsider. I'm going to be your agent right now. Anyway, all right. So you make Bound, you sell Assassins and to Donner, and you make Bound, and then tell me a little bit about how that you go from Bound to the Matrix, because I've drilled these guys to be really professional and stuff, but I need to ask about the Matrix real quick. So there's a lot of anime influences. Obviously, there's the you talk about the cell animation and the 2D and the 3D that you're using throughout the course of it, including the invention of bullet time and all these major historical moments for us, right? Talk to me a little bit about that journey from Bound to the Matrix, and then the sense of validation you must have felt after the Matrix came out.
Well, there was this very rubbery period during that time. I think that we had written the first draft of Matrix before Bound, and so it had gone around town. We were like, this is the thing. This is what's gonna do it for us. It's gonna put us on the map. Everybody, we were gonna choose exactly who's gonna buy this. And our agent sent it all around town. Everybody passed. We sent it to every big name director you can imagine. Everybody like, no, we don't want this. And it ended up at Joel Silver's because he was the last one, and he was like, I gotta have it. And we were like, oh God, Joel, I don't know, this might bite us in the ass. And we're like, okay, we'll sell it to Joel. And it kind of went. Joel bought it. Joel was on the Warner lot, so Joel is a producer in the Warner system. He gets overhead. Warner Brothers gives him money. Joel funds projects. So Joel bought it. Warner Brothers, they weren't too keen on it. They were like, we had our first meeting with the executives there, and they were like, okay, we know we bought something cool. Just don't know what it is. And so we went into this. It was just like one of those hamster wheels of trying to explain what the story was. And we got to this point where, okay, so then Bound comes out, and Warner Brothers had just did a remake of Diabolique, which wasn't a success for them. And it cost, $60 or $70 million. And Bound had cost at that time like $4 million. And so the head of Warner Brothers, this guy, Terry Semel, he was like, oh, we make this movie, and it's like, it's this movie and it's a piece of crap, and this other movie was only made for $4 million and it's fantastic. And they were like, what are these guys doing? These guys. And little did they know. And so we just got into these meetings. We were like digging in. We were like, we got to this point where we're like, we don't want anybody else to make this. Nobody gets it. And so we got Joel to giving us a little money here and there. And we hired our friend this guy, Steve Scrose, who was, we had written comic books before this whole thing. That's what we were doing. We were in the comic book industry. And we wrote this comic called The Ecto Kid. It's a classic. This is the Clive Barker verse. Yeah. So and so we were like, Steve, why don't you start drawing to us some sequences? And so I think the very first images that we drew were the big helicopter crash. And we would show these drawings, and they would go, oh, well, that looks kind of cool, but what is it? Why can't they blow up the Matrix? And I'm like, you can't blow up the phone company, guys. And all the metaphors were pre-internet. Nobody understood the idea of a grid, and so we kept getting money. We're like, okay, we got to make this somehow. We got Roger Corman this thing up, and we made these budgets that were, you know, 25 million, 30 million. And we ended up like doing draft after draft after draft. But every time we would do a draft, we would like we'd get to hire a couple of more writers and, or artists. We got Jeff Darrow in there, and then a few other local guys, local folks. And suddenly we had these tomes of storyboards. Like me and Lana could sit on either side of an executive or an actor, or that we did this with Terry Semmel. Terry Semmel was here, and me and Lana were on either side doing like sound effects, and we'd flip the page, and we'd bring out some giant art, and you could basically sit and watch the entire movie that way. It was like this puppet show almost. And while this was all happening, Warner Brothers was on this bad run of releases. They had like all of these box office disasters where every single movie that they wanted to be a hit was either like a catastrophic failure at the box office, or just like middling, like not quite good enough. And so the pressure in the studio was mounting to this like people were like, oh my God, they were all afraid they were going to lose their jobs. And we were just like, plugging away, and we're like, hey, when are we going to make this? Who do we need to put in this to make this? And they were like, okay, you got to put in Brad Pitt. And we would go talk to Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt would say no. And we go talk to Will Smith. And, Will Smith, famously, he's like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go do this other thing. And like time after time, like Sandy Bullock, all these people, they were all like, no, we don't want to do it. And then finally we went to Keanu, and Keanu was like, whoa, what is this? What is this thing? And, we gave him the puppet show, and he was just like, Keanu. When we were having these like amazing, it was like the first time that we were talking to an actor where they could see the depth in the piece, and we were having these like conversations with him that only me and Lana or some of the artists were having. And so we were like, okay, this is the guy. He can do it. But Keanu wasn't quite big enough for them. And so we were just like teetering on this point where we were going to get a chance to make it. And we wanted Lawrence. Lawrence Fishburne was our guy from the very beginning. We were like, there's only one guy who can play Morpheus. It's Lawrence. He's got the gravity. He's got he feels like a revolutionary. Like I would follow this guy anywhere to the ends of the earth. And they said no, they didn't want him. We went through all these other guys, and then finally we got to this point where they were like, okay, but you have to cut $8 million out of the budget. And so we ended up like having to do the whole helicopter sequence. The first sequence that we drew was this thing that was called a carrot item. And so we were like, okay, we're making it. And so we flew to Australia, and because there was like a big tax rebate there. It was the first of its kind. And in the meanwhile, Warner Brothers was still like sliding to this point where all of the executives who were on it were saying that if we didn't give them a hit movie, they were all going to be fired. And this is our second movie. So we're like, okay, no pressure. So yeah, we just we took all that art, and it was like It was absolute, not ironclad, but it would be hard to screw it up with all of the art that we had drawn. And you can look through those pages of storyboards and it's pretty, it's pretty solid. And if anything, it probably, it, it might have like, set us back a little bit in terms of, being fluid, that we became obsessed with what was in this little tiny box and like trying to get it to match up. And like sometimes that uh that denies the organic nature of play. Your actor wants to embody the role, not embody a storyboard. And so uh, I had to unlearn that in my life. But yeah, well, how's that for an answer? I know you wanted to talk about influence and anime and stuff like that, and the bullet time stuff. What do you want me to say about that?
Well, say something about the anime. Don't worry about the bullet time stuff. That's
Okay.
so done. But talk to us
Let's
about anime, about influences like maybe Ghost in the Shell, things that you saw that you wanted to see it sort of in your universe, and then I'm going to throw it back to these guys.
Okay. I think that sort of stuff is I mean, one of the sort of guiding ideas was that we wanted to play with time, um, and that there are moments where we, just like very small shots that things are moving at different speeds. And so like there's this moment when Trinity's on the motorcycle and Neo has just chickened out and didn't move along that ledge the way Morpheus said, and the cops are leading him out. And you look in the rear view mirror and he's moving in slow motion with the cops, and she's the rest of the background is in normal speed. And like that is like a quintessential anime technique. And I think it's about trying to create images that you don't see in live action. Like all of the best things that anime does that at that time people weren't really experimenting with in film. And so we were like, we want to, we were so tired of like, pyrotechnics and the way that, people would shoot guns and, it would always be pew, 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 pew. And like these sparks would go off on walls and sparks would go off at anything, whether it was metal or not, like sand. Like you'd shoot some beach and there'd be sparks. We're like, oh, how do sparks happen when you shoot the sand? And so like that's a thing that's cool in anime and even like comic books. It's like you can draw anything. And so we were like, well, these columns, we just want to destroy these columns and see the rebar inside. Um, and that was like heavily influenced by the Ghost in the Shell scene with the giant spider bug thing, that battle. But there was other stuff as well. I mean, the idea of bullet time came out of that whole manipulation of time. It was like, how do you, because in live action cinema, the camera is an anchor to reality. It is like you are bound to like 24 frames a second, or whatever frame rate you're shooting. It is like we're all on the same clock, and we were like, we just want to pull that camera off of that time restraint, that time constriction, and let it flow around in a way that we hadn't seen before. And so, yeah, I think that'll suffice.
That's a good answer. Excuse me. Your films often contain moments of such like humanity and beauty. Specifically, one that's really stuck with me is in The Matrix Revolutions, towards the end when they fly up and Trinity sees the sun. It's like a moment that, like, to me almost feels transcendent. And I was wondering if you could talk to me about like transcendency in your movies, like how that comes about, just like about, yeah.
I think like a lot of a lot of s- hmm, I think you're doing yourself an injustice if you're not asking the question, what does it mean to be a human being? Where do we find joy and beauty in the world? And so, like when I talk about finding joy and beauty in the making now as a filmmaker, like that's part of it. And so, uh, like I think people when Reloaded came out, like people like really they hated the whole rave scene in Zion. And I think like to some extent when people when people when people shit on movies, they're really revealing something about themselves. Um, and in that instance, like, it's like people didn't want to see like a cavern full of black folks having a fucking awesome party and like getting it on. And but for us, that moment was that kind of moment that you're talking about, this transcendent moment. It's like, how do we find joy in the world? How do the people of Zion find joy? What is it worth? What is worth fighting for? And it's these moments that we like to I like to see in film. I like to put those moments in my film. I like to experience it while I'm making it. And in fact, what I strive for now is to like have those things work in parallel so that I'm having these moments on set and I'm mirroring them in my work. And so, yeah, I think that's the answer, that it's about, yeah, that's the answer.
Thank
Thank you.
We have about 14 minutes left, just to let you know. And
Okay.
we're gonna move on to our next audience question.
All right, our next audience question is from Ali and Amara.
Hi. So
Hello.
my name's Amara. My sister unfortunately couldn't be here, but her name's Ollie. And basically, we wanted to ask you about like what is your biggest takeaway of like working with your sister in the industry and like writing together and directing together, because that's what we want to do. And we were just wondering if there was any like takeaway or any advice that you had for like us sisters working together.
Yes. Well, it's a magical experience. Um, Hugo Weaving had this awesome thing this awesome um, the way he viewed us, a takeaway, and that is that when you, as an actor, when you work with one person, um, the access that you get to the stuff in that director's brain is limited to this monologue, right? But when a duo is working together and that duo is, they're simpatico and they know their material inside and out, that it externalizes that monologue into a dialogue. And so it creates this moment that is, that allows the actor to see the reasoning behind the choices that the director is making, because the two directors are talking about it right there on set usually. And so I think that, like, the best thing that you have going for you is that you are already in collaboration. You're collaborators who are participating in a communal art form, a collaborative art form. So you are more naturally inclined to fit into that space. And it's like, just the two of us, we would rely on each other to, like, if somebody was not quite, was like wiped out, then the other person could lift them up, and, like, you end up carrying each other. And that's like a good thing to think about for, directors who are working by themselves, is you have to work on your oratory skills. You have to work on your interpersonal skills to make sure that you are enjoying the benefits of the community that you're working with. You're all artists, and you're all trying to, you're hopefully all headed towards a singular goal. And so, yeah, how does that sound? Does that sound okay?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Give your sister a hello.
I will.
All right, we have another audience question from Sophie.
Okay, I'll find it.
You guys have that? Okay, cool. All right. Anyway, hi, it's lovely to meet you. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So, you make a very conscious effort to either center or include queer people and stories in your films and shows, and I'm wondering, how do you go about maintaining, like, that very unfiltered, raw queerness in both the story itself and then translating that for a broader audience? And you've talked a lot about also, like, selling that to studios as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's so little queer content out there still that I'm always of the mindset that putting queer characters or trans characters, or, in a lot of cases, Black and brown characters in different kinds of narratives is like a revolutionary act. It's when you see a trans person playing a role that you've never seen a trans person playing before, that's about revolution. We are literally, like, changing people's perception about the world, about the way we look at the world, and about who gets to participate in the world, and, like, in stories and film and all that stuff. And that doesn't come easy for for establishment. It doesn't come easy for studios and networks and folks that adhere to bottom line ideology. And yeah, I mean, all we can do is try to find our allies, try to find push people outside of their comfort zone to let us tell our stories. And then as far as like, you know, the making, I think it's that part is it's a little tricky. I mean, I feel like for me, I'm extra sensitive when I write trans characters, when I write queer characters. It's I want to make sure that I'm trying to be true as much as I can to them. But I don't want to, there is such a long history of negative stereotypes that I try to be very protective of my characters. And so I would always like encourage filmmakers to do the same. It's like you as artists, as a writer, I understand like the responsibility that I have to the characters in my story. And it's like, when I think about, there are conscious decisions that I'm making when if somebody is living or dying. And like, those are like moral decisions. And so you have to like take a step back and go and look at the ethics of your writing, I think sometimes. Like, does this character in this universe, am I okay with letting this character, you know, pass away or be murdered or die in an accident? You know, those are all like really important questions, especially when it comes to trans people. Like, you know, yeah, I can't kill any trans. I'm not going to kill any trans people in any of my stories. No way. There's a litany of dead trans people in all of these stories that have come before mine, and mine is going to stand out because they're not going to die. All of my trans characters are going to live happily ever after.
I understand. Thank you so much. This is like personally as a queer and femme filmmaker, it's an honor to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
So before we lose you, I want to point out your painting right behind you. Is that your Cthulhu duck?
That's one of my paintings, yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your paintings, and then is there anything you can tell us about Trash Mountain?
Yes. Yeah, I have a printout that you'll get a closer look. So I started painting these ducks. I started painting these ducks after my "I'm walking away from this industry forever" speech, and there was because it's on the heels of my transition. I needed to paint something that I was feeling, and so I had painted quite a few of them, and then ended up going back to school. I was like, driving down to the Art Institute with my partner, and he would drop me off, and he'd go to work, and you know, I'd go to painting class. And in that painting class, it was cool because I got to experience. I got to learn how to talk about my art because I would get into crits, and in the crits you talk about each other's work, and so I was like talking about other people's work and like doing my best to lift up the students and go, oh, this is cool, it reminds me of this. And sometimes I was way off base, and sometimes I was pretty spot on. And in either case I wanted to leave them with something to feel good about their work. And in doing so, I like started to like look at my own stuff and go, oh, hey, wait a minute, that's me. I was like, okay, I'm doing self-portraiture. That duck is me, and this is how I view myself in the world. And so it's like fire and blood and skies of darkness and lava and all this stuff. And so it's like it's interesting because like once I understood that, I was able to like turn that camera around to all of the other stuff that I've been working on my entire life and go, oh, okay, self-portraiture and art, it's a real thing. There's self-portraiture in all of our work, mine and Lana's, and that's what the duck is.
Anything you can share with us about Trash Mountain?
Yes, Trash Mountain. So Trash Mountain is it's written by Caleb Haran, who was in Work in Progress. He's a TikTok comedian. Do you all know him? Caleb Says Things. Point of view of your friend. I don't know. He's very funny. You can look at him up. He's a young comedian. You'll get a kick out of him. Just really funny, fat, queer, does drag every once in a while. And he was on Work in Progress. I met him on Work in Progress. We loved him so much, we brought him back for the second season in a completely different role. And he sent me the script, and it's just this, it's funny and it's sad, and it's about his experience with his dad dying, and like his dad was a hoarder, and so he has to go leave Chicago and go take care of his estate and Podunk, Missouri, and or rural Missouri, I should say. And it's meant to. I've been attached to direct it for a while, and we're still like scratching around for money. The industry is since the strikes, it's been completely turned on its head. It has not gotten back to normal, and so financing is like really difficult to come by. And so those articles were the producer trying to drum up some press for us, and the jury is still out, so we don't quite have financing, but yeah, that's it.
So we have a little tradition. We do a selfie at the end of it. You're on a big screen. Everybody comes up. Is that okay with you?
Ah.
Okay, here we go. Oh, we got a lot of people.
All right.
What's your name? What's the duck's name, Lily?
Oh, I don't know. No, it's just little duck.
You two come to the front.
Yeah. Wait. Hey.
We have room to take a step forward. Projector. What are we gonna say, Walter?
What are we gonna say?
Little duck.
Ducks. 1, 2, 3, ducks. All right. Thank you. Lily, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you. Walter was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So cool.
Lily, I'll shoot you a text. Love you. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, y'all. Thanks, Andrew.